Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Good morning. Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
And I'm Gavin Courtney.
And thank you for joining us this morning.
Another nice morning.
That's right.
Seems like it's going to be pretty warm again.
Yeah. Lots happening too. Today is the first day of the budget debate, and it starts at 9 a.m. this morning. So we know that that's going to be taking place inside the House, while outside the House, the protest actions from the unions continue.
Yes, of course, if you've been watching the news or if you've just been around this week, you'll know that the joint unions have been planning a number of different protest actions starting last week, Friday. Each day has been a different form of protest, and of course we've been bringing you our coverage of that on our regular newscast in the evenings. But of course the unions are trying to send a strong message to the government. As we know, the big topic is the proposed 10% pay cut as well as the increment freeze, and you know, we've seen what the arguments are on both sides by now.
Of course, and at this time it is still, from the unions, we keep on getting the message, it is still a resounding no. Where they are in being able to hammer out a way forward, that's something that's being held close to the chest. We've heard stories of, gotten reports of proposals being made, but we of course will bring you all those updates as we get them confirmed. As of today, though, we know that a part of the protest action is that the unions will be lining the highways, the highway as they on the way to Belmopan. So if you are going to be traveling that way, you do want to know that there's going to be a bit more action, probably a bit more traffic, and you can keep that in mind. And they will be out there showing their discontent with the current proposal.
Yes, exactly. And the government is, on the other hand, saying that, well, the wage bill is too high for things to continue as they are at present. And that's the reason for the increase. And we've been seeing, you know, various various arguments put forward on behalf of the government. We've seen them say things like, well, either this option for a pay cut or there's going to have to be retrenchment because we can't continue. And you know, they've been saying things like the amount of money that they've been borrowing every day, or on a monthly basis in order to meet their obligations just to pay people. We've actually been seeing some ads being brought out for the public, which also show the government's position. So it seems that they're still at an impasse as we speak.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll be an opportunity as well, being at the House, that we can get some perspectives from the representatives as to how they feel about it. So today's a big day in the news. You don't want to miss it. It's going to be at 6 p.m. live tonight. And we'll have our updates on our News 5 Facebook page. Yeah. Right? But there's other big news happening as well. And we haven't gotten a chance to talk about it. The 9 minutes that we heard around the world, there was a big development that took place in that particular case.
Yes, so if you've been paying attention to some international news, you'll know that this week was the very significant verdict in the case of George Floyd. As we know, this was the case of a police officer in the United States who killed a man while he was being arrested. Of course, this has gotten international attention because it's been another instance in the States of what appears to be, or what many people are saying is, a racially motivated well, we can say murder now because
Yeah.
he has been
Yeah.
because he has been convicted. Racially motivated murder of a black man by the police, and we know that he was being arrested for a relatively minor offense, but he was knelt on for 9 minutes, and he ultimately passed away due to the suffocation and all of the complications that were associated with that. And of course, from us watching all around the world and even within the United States, the reaction was strong because you can't believe that somebody would do that to another human being.
Yeah.
And of course, he was charged with several different counts of murder and I believe manslaughter by careless conduct, and he was found guilty on all counts by the jury, and that was announced on Monday.
Yeah. It was, I mean, if you've been following the trial, for me, one of the things I think that was really tough is just constantly having the moment replayed. The different camera angles of the 9 minutes where Chauvin knelt on George Floyd's neck, where they dissected every single moment of where, he was trying to push himself, kind of trying to save his own life. It was heartbreaking, and I could only imagine, especially for family members and people who feel so deeply connected to the case because of charges of racial profiling or racism within America, how difficult it must have been to see that. But that moment before the verdict, it was really interesting to watch when you saw businesses starting to shutter down and the crowds were coming out in anticipation, and you knew it could go either way. And I'm not talking about the verdict. I'm talking about the reaction from the people. That was really intense to watch as well. But of course, he was found guilty.
Yes, and that was as you said exactly before the verdict, it was an extremely tense moment, I think, because we didn't know what was going to happen. And if you've followed cases like this before, you know that there was a good chance that it may have gone the other way, and that that's one of the things that a lot of the commentators and justice advocates have been speaking about, is that that there's racism and it's systematic, and it doesn't start with, and it's not just restricted to the policing, it's the whole way that they try cases and the way that they select juries and all sorts of things which would lead one to which sort of stack the odds against the victim. And we've seen so many different times when it hasn't worked out the way that perhaps public opinion would want it due to the flaws in the system, I can say. We see cases like Trayvon Martin, where his killer was let go. We've seen other instances of police killing police killing black men and even children, and they've gotten off. And so society has been tense, and this is something that goes back years and years. And a lot of Belizeans might remember the Rodney King case, which was in the early 90s. I believe it was 1992. Lots of Belizeans living in LA, so that,
and it was huge news.
Exactly. And then after all of the officers were acquitted, there were huge race riots in LA for many weeks after protesting that same sort of injustice.
So that is the latest update on that particular case. We know that we spoke about when the video went viral, when George Floyd was killed, and just to be able to say that this is the result in this day and age, it's very promising. And I think in watching the news coverage, all the activists say the same thing. This is progress, but this is one case, and I think that's the key part. Yeah,
and no, absolutely, it is progress, and hopefully his family and loved ones do feel a sense of justice, and we hope that. I hope, I should say, that it's that we see that sort of trend progressing, where we can address some of these serious issues in society, because of course it's not just restricted to the United States.
All right, and with that though, we got to get moving into our show for today, and that means it's time for our eye opener. And our eye opener, taken from DailyOM.com, goes like this. When we've chosen to make our home a place of harmony, we allow love's energy to expand in the lives of all who live there. At their best, our homes act as our sanctuaries. They are the nests we return to for rest and nourishment before we venture out once again to spread our wings and fly. But there are times that we may feel quite differently about our homes. Times when we feel surrounded by turmoil rather than harmony, or mired in chaos rather than immersed in peace. It is at these times that we have the power to decide to bring more love into our homes. After allowing some time for reflection, gathering to discuss each person's ideas may lead to the discovery that there are conflicting concepts about what your shared home should provide. Once this information is out in the open, we have a roadmap for creating balance and harmony and seemingly disparate desires. Together, agreements can be made to enable all to take the steps needed to create a unified vision. Each person will be nurtured, allowing them to take that peace and serenity with them into the world, sharing it with whomever they may encounter, and making every space they enter a warmer and more loving place for everyone.
That's a nice eye-opener, and I think that whilst you were talking, I was thinking about that well-known phrase when talking about home is where the heart is, and I think that stems just from kind of what this is talking about. It's from the idea that home is some place that you should be really comfortable and really at peace, and that's why you have a long day at work, or you do, wherever you are, and then you should always come home to that one place where it's peace and you're centered. But of course, if you live with other people, and in any way, it could be your own kids, it could be your spouse or partner or whatever. Once it's a shared space, that it can't just 100% be, roses all the time. So, I like the end where they did talk about bringing it out into the open and sharing what your idea of home is, so that even if there's a conflict, you can address it and come to a happy medium, so that you can find that balance, because it really is important for you to have that space to yourself where you can really feel open and comfortable, and that's what your home should be. And it even goes to things like how you decorate and stuff, that can make you feel differently, when you from room to room or whatever. So so
definitely some compromise there. I just like the idea, if you're going to share any space with someone, you have to realize that your likes and your needs are going to be different from theirs. It's that simple. And it's the same in the house, whether it's like you like the TV on or off during the day. That's a very simple one. If you have kids and they're going to bring friends over, and maybe you're tired at the end of the day, or they're going to be playing video games, being loud, playing. But having that conversation, that's really, for me, what the eye-opener just reminds us, as it does time and time again. Have that conversation. Be clear on what you want, and then it makes it a lot easier to build the type of environment, because you should have some kind of restful place that you go home to at the end. And if you can't get the whole house in order, at least one space. Yeah. And
I think it's also important, I'll speak for myself here too, but I think it's super important that when you do have a shared space, that you also have that one place where you can take your own individual space as well. And even if it's just for if you need even 5 minutes out of the day just for you to clear your head, just relax, unwind. Of course, company is always nice and whatever, but I think, for some people it's different thing. Some people just use that time, they could be, in bed, in the shower, in the TV, and just have 5 minutes to yourself, or create that space where you can read, or because as you said, if you do have a shared space, perhaps there might be an argument, so you need to have a space for yourself too in that event as well.
Even if it's just the bathroom, right?
I don't know. I was thinking, as I was talking, I was thinking, you ever see that show, Tiny House Hunters? And I'm always wondering, how could you do that? when they have their partner, kids.
No, I haven't seen that one. That makes me cringe already. All right, but we're going to keep things moving, and it is time to get our weather update. And we have Francisca Wellington on the line. Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you today?
I am great, and how about you guys?
I'm hoping it's not going to be so hot.
It's the dry season.
All right, yeah, so it sounds like you're going to let Marlene down.
I just sit back.
All right, so let's get into our forecast. What does the general situation look like?
Okay, so it's warm and it's dry, like I said, and we'll be seeing sunny skies, a few cloudy spells, and if we have any showers, it will be isolated.
And our winds?
Okay, be out of the east, 10 to 20 knots, choppy to moderate seas, and we are seeing 3 to 5 feet waves.
Okay, let's talk our temperatures. What can we expect for today?
Okay, let me start out in the mountains, just to give you the good news.
Okay.
Only 82 Fahrenheit up in the Maya Mountains, 88 along the coast, and 94 inland. And then overnight temperatures will be 80 along the coast, 75 inland, and 68 up in the Maya Mountains.
Okay. And what does our outlook look like as we head into Friday?
Okay, so I'm seeing even drier conditions setting in. So Friday and the weekend, we'll be seeing fair and dry conditions. Warm as well, of course.
Hi.
Yeah.
You say warm, but you really mean hot. You mean hot by Belizean standards, but not by meteorological standards.
I'm trying to ease it, Marlene.
All right. And while I am of course voicing my complaints, they're inland. They're definitely feeling the brunt of it. The weekend
That's
looks
it.
like it's going to approach 100 for them.
Let me see. I am not seeing that. I'm seeing up to about 98.
Okay.
Just.
Okay. All right.
Okay, well, Francisca, thank you so much for the update.
You're welcome.
All right, have a great day.
Have a great day. Bye.
Thanks, and same to you. Bye-bye.
There you have it. Of course, you got to keep on reminding you, stay hydrated, stay out of the sun if you can, and of course, check in on the elderly and the young ones to make sure that they're also taking care of themselves when it's very warm like this as well.
Yep, and take care of your pets too if you
Yes,
have them.
please. All right, we got to get moving into our show for today, and we have been talking about the monitoring of COVID-19 in the country. Today we're going to be talking to an epidemiologist from the Ministry of Health and Wellness about the trends that we've seen since the start of the pandemic. We'll find out how we're doing and if we really are entering a third wave. So that's going to be the first part of our conversation for today.
And the second part of our conversation, we are going to be talking all about International Day of ICT, and we're actually highlighting women and ICT, which is information communications and technology. So we are going to be hearing from some women in that field for our second conversation this morning.
All right, and to close off for today, we spoke of the people who are monitoring the data. Now we're going to be talking to people who are working in labs. It is Medical Lab Professionals Week, and we're going to be talking about the role that they play in healthcare and, of course, how they've been celebrating this week.
Yep. And that's going to be our show for this morning, and we're going to get right into our first conversation. But before we do that, we do have a birthday shout out to give this morning. So from all of us here at Open Your Eyes and Channel 5, we want to wish a very happy birthday to Josh Arana. Yep.
I was trying to drum
Try
a bit
to-
for him there, yeah? But that was probably not a good idea. Josh, we hope you have a great day today. And that comes from all of us here at Channel 5 and Open Your Eyes.
But as we said, we do have to take a very short break, and when we come back, we are going to be talking all about the trends that we saw in COVID-19 in Belize over the past year. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us. Then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something. The Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Es un hecho que puedes obtener servicios ilimitados con Smart. ¿Cansado de que se corte la línea cuando más necesitas estar conectado? Es un hecho que cuando te suscribes al plan de Smart Plus, obtienes llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Y también es un hecho que te puedes suscribir con un grupo de 5 miembros al plan Smart Share y hasta 40 miembros al plan Smart Enterprise para llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Smart tiene los verdaderos planes ilimitados. Es un hecho. Sé Smart y vive de forma Smart.
Why, Tony?
Boy, kid, where you going, man?
I actually come see you because I need to buy a stack of them plastic plates and cups for my grocery shop because I run low.
Boy, I stopped importing that thing since April 15th, you know. And I just ran out to the last batch, must be about like 3 weeks back, you know.
Man, do I usually have anything? Where you going?
Check this, right? Under the new law, we ban all single-use plastics, so that the cups, plates, forks, spoons, and knives, all of that. Since April 15th, can't import none of them. Starting January 15, 2021, you can't manufacture them. April 15, 2021, you can't sell them. And after July 14, 2021, if you get catch with any other thing, you will get fined.
Me never know this. I guess I have to make some changes then. I have to make the customers know that anything not available. Anyways, bro. Thanks, man.
No problem, man. Take care.
Dwayne Moody, Isani Cayetano, Andrea Polanco, Paul Lopez. Your News 5 Belize teams do whatever it takes. Go wherever they need to go, so you can catch the story wherever you are, whenever you want, on whatever device. Channel 5 Belize on television, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Because news is now everywhere, all the time. And so are we.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And we're back, and if you're joining us now, we're just getting our first conversation for this morning started. We are bringing you our COVID-19 update, and as we said before the break, we are going to be talking about some trends that we saw in COVID-19 over the past year. And joining us for this morning, we have Antonio Hagar, who is an epidemiologist at the Ministry of Health and Wellness. Good morning.
Good morning, and good morning to all you guys out there listening.
All right.
I'm viewing as well.
All right. Thanks for joining us. And why don't we start by let's have a little bit of an introductory discussion, I guess, and let's talk a little bit about what your work is and how you've been involved with monitoring and managing the COVID-19 pandemic with the ministry.
Right, so as an epidemiologist at the Ministry of Health, my role basically encompasses monitoring of diseases, not necessarily just COVID, but the whole range of diseases, communicable as well as chronic diseases. And one of the things that I do along with the team, because it is basically a team effort at the Ministry of Health and at the epidemiology unit, is to analyze the data to see if we can get anything meaningful from it. In terms of looking at trends, in terms of looking if there's any outbreaks, looking at long-term trends, seeing if certain diseases are increasing or decreasing over the years, and basically then using that data to better inform how we go about making policies and making changes and planning our strategies as a Ministry of Health.
Okay.
And okay, so then let's go back to March of 2020, and we started, I suppose, making preparations for what was happening, well, for COVID-19 coming in Belize. So were you looking at the international situation at that time and in order to prepare for what would happen in the country?
Yes, actually we all were as a Ministry of Health. Everyone at the EPI unit, everyone at headquarters, everyone I believe working in the Ministry of Health and even outside of the Ministry of Health was very much monitoring the situation. As many of you, as you guys may remember, actually some of the first actions that were taken were in terms of screening at the airport. Yeah. So that came about as a partnership between the airport authorities and Immigration and Customs. But yes, we were actually monitoring the situation very closely, seeing how it was actually jumping from country to country, region to region, and basically, in a way, anticipating when it would actually get to Belize and how we would actually deal with it. But we were actually looking at it to see how it progressed.
Okay. Now, let's talk about the importance of understanding the trends of the detection. Because where we can talk about a case number, as in the total number of cases, what you do goes a bit deeper. You dive into the who, the where, and even looking at why or how they came in contact.
Yes, that's right.
Go ahead.
That's basically, that's basically the job of an epidemiologist, the who, what, when, and where of a disease. Mm-hmm. So as you rightly said, it's not just looking at superficial data, not just looking at raw numbers, which can obviously only tell you so much. It's more about how you interpret those values in the context that they come in and realize what they mean for the people on the ground as well as for us as policymakers and what action should be taken to actually bring a particular disease or outbreak under control.
Yeah, and we have such a clear indicator of that. We spoke with the Minister of Health earlier this week, and he pointed out that the recent cases we're seeing in Belize, they have two areas that are concentrated in a village in Orange Walk as well as in the city. And so the connection made there is that we may be looking at a situation where illegal border crossings may be contributing. Is that the type of inference that you would make from your data?
Yes, not by necessarily just looking at location, although location is important.
Yeah.
But more importantly, like I said, it's a team effort. Mm-hmm. So that is where, we get these little points of data, these data points that come from particular locations, we obviously ask the who, which is, who is being infected, what age group, what type of occupation, like we're going to get into in the presentation.
Yeah.
And then going from there, that's a lead, that's a start. That is when our public health officers on the ground would then do subsequent investigations to actually follow up and do the contact tracing and figure out, okay, is this something that seems to be just like flaring up from what we already had in the country, or is this something entirely new that may have been brought into the country from border jumpers? So those are investigations that are actually still very much actively taking place. And we learn more as those investigations go along and as we get the results from them.
All right. Well, let's start talking about what we know so far. You have a collection of data that you've been able to compile from what was the first and second wave of COVID in our country. What does it tell us so far?
Yeah, so the data that I intend to present today is based on 2020 data. 2020, it was the year that it all, I shouldn't say all began, because honestly, COVID began. SARS-CoV virus originated or was detected back in 2019. But for our purposes as a country, 2020 is when it all began, specifically March of 2020. And so what our data is basically showing, I can see with the first slide, is that as you can look at the far left-hand corner, just past beyond April, that's when we first detected our first case. From there, looking in hindsight, it was just the tip of the iceberg, as they say. Those first cluster of cases that we saw, in Cayo, in Belize City, in San Pedro, obviously. And then, went into lockdown mode. That's basically where you have the red line, by the way, at the bottom is basically showing you the incidence rate. The blue columns are basically the raw numbers of cases. And you can see that that red line is basically staying flat, meaning that, relative to the entire population of the country, even though, those cases were very important and they even resulted in a few deaths, relatively speaking, in incidence-wise, it was basically very low. And it maintained that pattern basically until we hit around June, July, when you start seeing these tiny little peaks in the increase in just absolute numbers, as well, obviously, as the incidence. Yeah. And then, going into August, that is when, everything really just took off. And that's basically when we had, if you look very closely at the graph, or two waves of 2020. The first one being basically August till around the ending of September. And then if you look around under October or over October, that's roughly speaking when the second larger wave basically hit Belize, peaked at around late November, early December. And likewise, if you follow the red line, which is the incidence, you notice that that's also the time when the incidence really shot up a lot. And so that time period of basically October going into the end of December, although it began to decline towards the end of December, that is basically so far where we have seen the greatest, absolute numbers as well as the greatest incidence in the country.
Let's get some terminologies clear here. So we talk about daily cases or daily case reports, the total number of cases. You're also talking about incidents, and there's also the talk of positivity rate. How do you differentiate these?
Yeah, so in terms of the daily positive number, that would be your incidence. Yeah. How many new people were newly diagnosed for the first time with COVID in Belize for one 24-hour period? That's your incidence. If you add up all of the people who are currently known to be actively positive for SARS-CoV to COVID-19, those people would represent your prevalence. So that's your total number of people who are currently active. And then if you look at the positivity rate, that's basically looking at how many tests were taken and then how many of those tests then resulted in a positive result. Okay. So for argument's sake, 100 tests were done in a particular day, 10 people resulted as being positive for SARS-CoV-2. Your positivity rate is going to be 10% for that particular day. Okay. And basically that's the concept of the positivity rate versus the prevalence versus the incidence.
Okay. All right. Now, you also have some data on how many of those positive cases were symptomatic. And I find that interesting, and I'm sure there's a good explanation for that.
Yes. Could you bring up that slide?
Yeah. So we're looking at
great.
70, yeah.
Yeah, for for the viewers at home, this presentation basically has two parts, more looking at the number of people who are sick, positivity rate, and then later on, we're hoping to get into the mortality rate or what the data about the deaths is showing. But this particular slide that you're looking at right now, symptomology, what percentage of people who turned out positive actually were symptomatic? You'll see that the majority of them here were actually symptomatic, 77% versus 23%, sorry. But I would treat that with a bit of caution.
Yes.
So we know that we were not necessarily getting everybody, especially at the height of the outbreak. At the beginning, we were very aggressively contact tracing and the numbers were smaller. As things slowly evolved and the cases obviously spread throughout the country, it became more and more difficult. And as you will remember, we had to prioritize who we actually tested. So if you're somebody who follows the international data, you would note that many of the medical experts and the public health experts would be saying that a majority of SARS-CoV cases, or at the very least half of SARS-CoV cases, COVID-19 cases, are actually asymptomatic. And some actually go to speculate that chart would actually be flipped on its head, that it would actually be 77% or over 70% asymptomatic and the remainder being symptomatic.
And the
So basically-
asymptomatic, the people who didn't have any symptoms, they were essentially just caught because of contact tracing.
Right. So what you in public health, it doesn't apply just to COVID, but in public health in general, whenever there's an outbreak of any disease, common sense will actually tell you that the more you look, the more you find. So again, as I said before, it's not for a lack of not wanting to investigate every single case, but given our limited resources as a ministry, at the height of the outbreak, we were forced to prioritize, and thus that did somewhat skew our data. Although from a wider perspective, we realized that there were many asymptomatic persons who we did not manage to actually get in contact with to do proper testing.
Yeah.
But nevertheless, we would pass on information to their families, to the families of infected persons, that they may have been infecting other members in their circle.
Yeah.
And those persons should act with caution because they would not know necessarily if they were not able to actually get a test.
That's interesting because one of the other breakdowns of data that you looked at was actually the reasons for why people would get tested in the first place. And if we can, it's just being brought up, and you can look into that in the context of what you just said.
So go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Okay, So basically, if you look at this, what stands out is that big red bar at the top, which is basically contact tracing. So we did, in fact, in terms of those who tested positive, we did, in fact, have, like I said, aggressive contact tracing, or public health officers working tirelessly on the ground to actually track down as many as possible of people who either were or were not symptomatic, or were in contact with somebody who was known to be positive. And so that's how we got the bulk of our cases. But if you'll notice after that, there was also a good portion of people who basically, found out or suspected that they were positive for COVID-19 because they were symptomatic. They may have been a bit scared or unsure of their symptoms, and so went in for a checkup, went into a health center. And that's how we actually got it. But yeah, as you can see on the graph, the majority was by actually active contact tracing.
So we have quite a bit of data that we want to get through. So I want to pull out some that are particularly interesting. We know hospital status. Your reports show that in December, in 2020, it was 6% of the positive cases that were hospitalized. 3% lost their life to the disease. And let's go to the district breakdown and then age. I think those are some of the interesting ones. So district, how much is this tied to the population size of these districts as well?
Right, excellent question. And so that is where incidence per district would come in. For the purposes of this presentation, I didn't want it to make it too lengthy, so I didn't put that in. But yes, if just looking at it casually, and then if you compare afterwards, if we go into the mortality data, you notice that there is actually a trend in terms of population and in terms of the numbers that are infected. So Belize district, if you go by official statistics, is the district with the largest population. Orange Walk and Cayo districts also do contain a fairly large proportion of the population of the country, as well Corozal. So actually, in fact, the majority, over half of Belize's population is clustered in the northern and central parts of the country. That would include Belize as well. Basically everything that is above the Maya Mountains. And then the southern half of the country basically accounts for somewhere around the lines of 20 to 30% of our population. And that is actually reflected, if you look at this chart, in the data. So where there were more people, there were more opportunities for the virus to spread. Where there were more opportunities for the virus to spread, more people became infected. Of course, it is not to say that other factors did not play a role. Things like population density, how many people live in a household, mobility. Some villages or some communities might be more remote than others. Some might be very accessible, like, basically traveling around Belize City, or some might need more time, factors such as that. Yeah. So, but nevertheless, roughly speaking, what we see in terms of the infection pattern basically overlaps with what we see in terms of our population pattern as a country.
Yeah, yeah. And going on to the age group, as was noted very early on, it's definitely the younger population who tend to, they test positive out of those that we've tested.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think this, for me personally, I mean, you guys might have a different take on it, but for me, this is actually one of the most interesting graphs, along with the graph on mortality broken down by age, because they're basically, as I was alluding to earlier, mirror images of one another. So yeah, if you look at that, without any kind of further analysis, you clearly can see that the bulk of transmission or the bulk of positive cases were among the younger age group. And remember, we were speaking just now about how population affects the amount of people who were found positive. Yeah. Belize is a youthful country. More than half of our population is below the age of 50. So it would make sense to an extent to expect that our younger population would actually account for the greater bulk of the people who tested positive. But nevertheless, it's also showing you that this is a population that that basically is interacting with one another, and to an extent, it is also showing you that it basically descends with age, partly because there's fewer elderly people in those age brackets, but also because the connectivity as well, the chance for an elderly person to meet somebody would have been reduced as people began to take the necessary measures, and elderly people began to also isolate themselves at home.
Yeah. So the majority of the cases are between 20 to 29, followed by 30. Pretty much the bulk of them are between that age group, 20 to 50.
Yes, 20 to 50, that's right.
Yeah. And then if you look at the mortality, it is the opposite. The smallest number of deaths happen between that group, 20 to 29, and it goes in the opposite direction.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
And one of the other interesting ones that I found, and I think you can probably go into a little bit more if there's a correlation, is the cases by occupation. Because, you can go into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you bring up that particular slide?
Yeah. Yeah, we have it. So the first one is the majority of deaths by occupation. Oh, I'm looking at that. It's cases. It's office workers.
Yes, yes. Again, that would actually be my second favorite slide out of that entire presentation, because it basically, again, aligns with what we see from the international data. Basically, what it's telling us is that from this data, and also aligning with the international data, is that many people, a majority of people in most cases, are catching COVID in enclosed places where there is poor circulation. It's made worse where there's more people packed into a particular room or a particular building. And as you can see there, when I was actually analyzing this data, I had to do a bit of coding to actually see where different job titles fit in. And when all the analysis was done, this is basically what it showed. So the single largest group, almost 20%, basically consisted of our office workers. So that is basically telling us, that there was and is, or I should say, the highest level of transmission was, because it's the 2020 data, in indoor settings, and so it heightens the whole need for us to actually have, as a people, as individuals, as workers, and also as employers who know that they have office spaces, that these spaces have to be made safe. It's not just a personal issue; it's a public health issue. It's a labor issue. It is something that basically ultimately affects productivity, because if your workers are sick and too sick to come to work, you're going to lose productivity and lose money. So it's not to say that nobody should go back to the office to work, but that the proper measures should be taken and put in place to ensure the health and safety of everyone in those enclosed spaces.
All right. And so, I do have to note there that to the bottom of that slide, it's sports. So only 1% of athletes or people who played sports came in contact. That's an
very
interesting.
Healthy people, very healthy people.
Yeah.
And outdoors most of the time as well.
Yeah, but I mean, when you look at the work itself, the agriculture sector, for example, was also a bit on the lower end. Education was out of office; they were out of classrooms, so that also ranks lower. So
I was going to say that I would imagine that when you analyze all of these different heads of data together, and perhaps you can talk a little bit about this, that the numbers would also correspond to, I suppose, when certain restrictions were eased and stuff. So, for example, when when we were in full lockdown and most offices were closed, we were not seeing a high amount of cases or a higher positivity rate. So perhaps we can get into a discussion about that, like sort of when you compare the different types of data, what the correlation between them is.
Yeah, great question. So I didn't put it on the initial slide that we showed, where there was, the slide with the incidents and the bars showing the overall numbers per day. But I mean, you could basically pick it out in terms of when there was this spike that basically started up in August. And yes, you're right. There is definitely a difference in the trend of transmission. So in Belize, like the rest of the world, there was minimal and has been minimal transmission in a formal educational setting, like was mentioned by Marlene. For obvious reasons, because schools were obviously some of the first places to get shut down. And now there's, slowly in the process of actually opening up back in stages. But what we know for a fact is that putting aside the lockdown, when we came out of lockdown, many employers were very eager to get back on their feet, get back into business. For obvious reasons, the lockdown took a severe toll on the economy, as we all know. And so understandably, a lot of offices opened back up. I have not actually, to be honest with you, gone in depth into see how the type of people being affected or being infected changed over the course of the pandemic. But I would strongly suspect that basically, and from what we know from data being collected by public health officers in the field, there was a shift in the pattern. So from being people who mostly were interacting with one another in parties and families, such as what happened in the early stage of the pandemic, we started to see a shift of people more becoming infected in, like I said, more enclosed settings where they thought they could let their guards down. And then, but that is basically the overall trend that we saw for that data.
Okay. And looking through the mortality data, let's talk about what we have been able to understand so far about the people who've lost their life to COVID. What stands out for you?
Well, first of all, again, Belize is not that different from other countries in the world, in the region, in the sense that males made up the bulk of our deaths. I think there's another slide that basically shows that it's over 60% of our deaths are accounted for by males. Actually, our first 2 deaths were among males. Yeah, that's the slide right there. So 63% versus 34 for, oh, that's hospitalization, sorry. Yeah, but yeah. So yeah, 67 versus 33% for females. So that is basically in line with what we see around the world in terms of men having a higher mortality rate. And there's many reasons for that. Some of them are reasons that are true for men wherever you are in the world. Men tend to have a more higher prevalence of certain types of diseases that would predispose them to being more susceptible to actually succumbing to COVID-19. But also there's also the whole issue of health-seeking behavior. Women, generally speaking, are more eager or more prone to actually go to a doctor the minute they feel ill, and men would probably try to tough it out until the last minute. And then we know from data that's also included in this presentation that if you wait until longer or until the last minute to actually access health at a health facility, your chances of actually surviving are greatly reduced by that point. So there's definitely a disparity in terms of the gender, in terms of who actually died from COVID-19.
Yeah.
And I see now you're bringing up the chart with the age. It's basically, like I said, is the mirror image, the complete opposite of what we saw in terms of the transmission. So would you like me to speak about this?
Yeah, definitely, because this was what you were mentioning earlier. So it's like you flip the chart upside down.
Right, exactly. Yeah. And so whereas the under 50 group was basically the least, had the least recorded amount of cases of positive COVID-19, they are, conversely the group that was actually the most hit by mortality. Specifically, if you're looking at the chart, the group that is 60 to 69, followed closely by the 70 to 79 group. Right after that, in third place, is the 50 to 59. And then curiously, you would think the 80 to 90 group, the 80 to 90 age group, is actually fourth in terms of the numbers of deaths. But as I was mentioning earlier in the presentation, we believe that the reason for that is not necessarily because older people have some type of protection, innate protection that prevents them from actually dying from COVID-19. It's just that people realized very quickly on in the pandemic that the elderly were the most vulnerable. And so in the cases of care homes, elderly homes, and just basically people who knew that they had elderly relatives, parents, grandparents, aunts, uncles, and took that data into consideration and basically made sure that these people, were exposed as little as possible. Some people going as far as to, basically telling their relatives not to visit. And as a result of that, I'm very sure played an important role in making sure that less of these people in that age group were exposed, and thereby less of them actually succumb to the disease.
No, it's important for us to be able to know, maybe we haven't in the conversation as yet, all this data is still very relevant for today. So these age groups are more susceptible to being transmitters of the 20 to 50, they're more likely to test positive, and the over 50 more likely to get serious illness and possibly die from COVID. This is not changed with the disease that we do have in country so far.
Yeah, interesting that you should mention that, because if you're speaking about the current variant, and even you're looking at the first variants that we started to look at, that does appear to still hold true as the general trend, that generally speaking, while young people would be out and about and interacting and having their social circles and their networks and getting the disease, elderly persons, or I should say persons who are basically above the age of 50, above the age of 60, while they might have a smaller network and not be interacting as much, when they do become infected with COVID-19, they do stand a higher chance of actually succumbing to disease. So that in terms of the clinical aspect of it has not necessarily changed. There's some increasing evidence that the strain that is present in Brazil at the moment is affecting more children and also affecting pregnant women, affecting babies. and also causing them to have a higher mortality rate compared to older or past variants.
Yeah.
That is still being actively investigated, and obviously it's something that we as the Ministry of Health are monitoring very closely to see how it develops and what the latest science shows.
Yeah.
But speaking of what we have in country, what we know for a fact having in country, that is actually the pattern that we see right now. Younger people getting it, but older people more likely to succumb to the disease.
So moving from 2020, and our data is looking at that first period. Let's talk about what's been happening since the start of this year. So January to April, we saw, I imagine if we had a chart, it would be a decline. But everyone has been actively looking at these numbers since we knew that Easter could have possibly been a spreader event. What's the data saying so far, Antonio?
Yeah, interesting. Sorry I couldn't put it into the current presentation, but we are still calculating the R0 number and the RT, which is basically the daily R0. As well, I also look at data in terms of incidents. And what I can say is that while, and I'm sure the minister mentioned this in his previous conversations with the news team, there was definitely a spike post-Easter. We have not, from the data that we're seeing so far, seem to be going back into that steep upwards trend that we had in, say, April or, say, August or even October of last year. Higher than what we had been seeing before, because obviously I think we're all hyper aware now of what our numbers are and of all of the progress that we have made. So going back to what you just mentioned, yes, if you could actually look at the charts that we've been making, cases have been steadily declining, both in terms of absolute numbers and as well as the 2-week trend. Ever since January of this year, that's a trend that began in December of last year and continued into this present year.
Yeah.
And so we definitely saw a small spike post-Easter because of obviously the mingling and the interaction between persons that took place. There is active contact tracing that has never stopped.
Yeah.
But in terms of looking at a sharp increase, the data does not support that at the moment.
So it's not a spike, but it is gradually growing.
It was a small spike, localized, but it has not resulted in, I would say, widespread as yet community transmission. And by that I mean, across multiple communities all simultaneously. That is not what we have seen. It is more along the lines of being concentrated at the moment in particular communities. And those particular communities have made up the bulk of the spike that we have seen post-Easter.
And that was the Guinea Grass and Belize City cases?
Yes, among other cases, yes.
Okay. Now, I mean, when you start to see this happen, and putting it into context, I was saying since the start of Easter to now, we're a bit over 100, maybe 100 and near 120 new cases found during this time. And it's definitely showing that we are reporting more cases. What happens now when you start looking at the data to ensure that we are able to take corrective actions and prevent the type of massive spikes that we've seen before?
Yes, so that's obviously a valid concern. And basically, we do what has worked in the past, which is to say, as I mentioned before, there's an amazing team of public health inspectors and others on the ground, contact tracers, community health workers, who would basically assist the Ministry of Health in doing the real work, which is the contact tracing, finding out where the origin of these outbreaks are, as we were speaking about earlier in our conversation, determining whether this was in fact an introduced case or introduced cases, or it's just because of people interacting more with the current variant that we have in the country. And so that is essentially what is taking place right now as we speak, to ensure that this situation does not blow up and get out of hand. The contact tracing, the testing, and the subsequent information to persons who are positive to ensure that they self-isolate to the best of their ability, and ensure that they do not then go on to infect other persons. And those three things, testing, tracing, testing, and isolating, are at the core of controlling any outbreak, not necessarily just COVID, but any infectious disease outbreak. Because if the infectious person cannot go ahead and infect new people, then you essentially stop the pandemic or the outbreak in its tracks. And those are the tried and tested methods of actually controlling the outbreak, and that's what we're using here in Belize.
Yeah. All right. And so, you know, we keep on monitoring, as you said, what is the R0, the positivity rate, the number of tests that turn out to be positive every time you do a batch. The new variants we have been monitoring, international news, they are reported as being highly transmissible, which means it spreads faster. What's the current R0, and has there been any shift since pre-Easter to now?
Yeah, so the last analysis that I did, which was earlier this week, showed that we are slightly above 1. Ideally, to have an outbreak under control, you want to have an R0 that is below 1, which means that less than one person on average is actually becoming infected.
Yeah.
One new person is becoming infected for every person that is positive. So we are slightly above 1 nationally.
Okay.
But that is not to say that you know, if we take the right measures in place at the moment, that it cannot be brought back down in terms of the numbers of persons being you know, showing up as positive. It will obviously take a time to actually contact trace and find out all of the persons who were exposed in the particular cases in those villages or in Belize City. But once that has effectively been done, we should be seeing a return to an R0 that is basically 1 or, you know, below, preferably below 1.
Yeah. Okay.
And of course, that's barring the entry of any other variant in the country.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we thank you so much for diving into all this data with us. It's important for us to put it into context, and this is the right time to do it when we're not in the thick of an outbreak. So, Antonio, we appreciate you sharing this information with us.
And thank you too for having me on.
All right. Okay. Stay safe.
You too.
All right. And so, of course, that was Antonio Hagar, who is an epidemiologist with the Ministry of Health and Wellness, talking a little bit about the data that has been compiled over the past year in relation to COVID-19 in Belize. But with that, we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about women in science, information, technology, and communications. So please stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service. Working off-site doesn't mean you have to be off your game. Studies have shown that simply adding a keyboard and mouse to your laptop increases productivity by 26%. Add a monitor, and you'll be 35% more productive. At Fulltech Systems, we have what you need to enhance your remote work or e-learning experience. With devices such as headsets, video conferencing monitors, webcams, keyboards, mice, docking stations, all with the brands you trust. Keep connected with collaboration tools like Microsoft 365 Suite and Kaspersky, and perform efficiently no matter where you are. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Hello? Okay, sure, I'll be there. Hello?
Hi, Mommy. When are you coming home? I really miss you.
Hearing the voice of our loved ones can always lift our spirits and make us feel whole again. With Smart's Twice as Nice promotion, prepaid customers who make 5 minutes worth of national calls on Sundays can enjoy 50% off. Top double on all national calls for the rest of the day. Call your loved ones and enjoy half off all day long. Smart, bringing people together.
2020 taught us the importance of being connected to the virtual world, and NextGen is here to keep its commitment to you. Even if you're physically apart, NextGen keeps you digitally connected.
Okay everyone, thank you for following me today.
NextGen provides more than just an internet plan. They provide service plans that support all your online needs. Sign up today and get your NextGen's ultra high-speed internet service. NextGen, powered by Central TV and Internet.
And we're back, and if you're joining us right now, we are getting our second conversation started, and we're talking about International Day in ICT. Specifically, we're celebrating women in information, communications, and technology this morning. And joining us for this discussion, we've got two women in the field. We have Shayna Young, who you might know if you are a regular viewer of our program. She's a senior climatologist at the Belize Meteorological Service. And we also have Faye Garnett, who is the program coordinator for non-traditional fruits with the Ministry of Agriculture. Good morning, ladies.
Hello, good morning. Good morning.
And thank you for joining us. This is a special day which we like to commemorate. So why don't we start with some introduction, just a little bit. Shayna, why don't we talk a little bit about who you are and what your job is? For the few people, I should say, who don't know you on our show already.
Okay, good morning. My name is Shayna. I'm the senior climatologist at the National Meteorological Service of Belize. And my responsibility currently is to handle all the data that comes into the office and to process those data in creating information and climate products for the general public.
And Faye?
Hi. Right now, my responsibilities include being, how can I put this? I would be the link between the farmers and producers and those that are processing with industry, trying to see how we can get our non-traditional fruits to Belize in a better position out there. So I also work along with my colleagues in doing trainings and preparing farmers and promoting agriculture on a whole.
And all right, so we're celebrating women in information, communication, and communication technology. Now, traditionally, there has been internationally, let's say, a lower number of women actually entering the STEM, and by that I mean science, technology fields and medicine. And so it's important to commemorate days like this. Now, in that context, let's start by talking a little bit about what got you interested in your field in the first place and what your experience was like, perhaps in education as a woman. So anybody can start with that one. Let's go with Faye, since you're on our screen.
All right, well, I have an interesting background. My parents, both my parents are very much interested in agriculture, and they had a farm. So you can imagine at high school, you're very excited about graduation and all that. Well, in my case, I was taken to a farm. So that was like the worst thing that could have happened to me then, not knowing that 18 years later, that's the best thing my parents could have done for me. So it was purely circumstantial, but I mean, after 6 months being on a farm, you start having a lot of value for everything around you. So I had quite an interesting start. From there, working hard, going to school. I was blessed with scholarships. I ended up coming to University of Belize. From there, I went to Costa Rica. I came back home, worked for a bit, and went back to work again, to study again, sorry. And now I'm here again, and each time trying to push forward, trying to work harder in agriculture, which is something that has a place for women. So that's basically how I entered into it.
And for you, Shania?
Yeah, well, mine is actually interesting also. Initially, I didn't have the mindset of becoming a meteorologist or even working in this field. I initially wanted to be a doctor, actually a pediatrician. But when I graduated sixth form, I started working at the Met Service, and it grew on me. And then I also saw the need for persons that are specialized in other areas of meteorology. So I just worked hard and focused my energy there. And similarly to Faye, I was blessed to get 2 scholarships. One to pursue my bachelor's in meteorology at the University of the West Indies, and another to pursue my master's degree in applied meteorology at the University of Reading in England. So it has been, one would say, career change in the sciences, because basically I've explored all scientific areas, but I've managed to find my niche or settling point in meteorology, but specifically in agrometeorology and climatology, because it gives me a unique opportunity to connect both the biological aspects of the sciences as well as the mathematical and technological aspects of the sciences in my current field.
Yeah. Now let's talk about representation. You know, it's such a key aspect. When we have days that are commemorated specifically looking at girls in ICT, it means that there is a need to focus on it. From your experience, do you see enough representation of women in this field?
From my experience thus far, no. In meteorology, and I know Faye will also elaborate on this in the field of agriculture, for instance, there is not a lot of women. I've had the opportunity to participate in a number of meetings, both locally, and regionally, and internationally. And whenever you attend those sessions and you look around the room, there's a limited number of women. And especially for us, there's also a limited number of young women in the field, especially when it comes to the higher levels of both professions. There's limited number of persons currently. So there is a great need for other young girls and also women in general to participate in these fields. And these are very interesting fields, and it presents us a unique opportunity to make a difference. So,
yeah. And for you, Faye?
Yes, I totally agree with Sheena. In agriculture, it's not of us that are in here. Fortunately for me, I had about 4 women that I always looked up to, and these women are still with us in the ministry, and some are with partner institutions. And I guess that's where Shayna and I will be in a couple of years. I think at the rate we're both going, because we have had interactions. Shayna and I have worked together on several things, but we are promoting and trying to get more women, more young girls interested, because it's so few of us.
And have you actually seen, or perhaps heard from other, perhaps younger girls or women who are interested in maybe not even just your field, but just in general sort of these science-related fields as well?
Yes, definitely. Because in agriculture, we have, for example, we promote a lot of school gardens. So when you interact with the children, you can see that spark of interest there. So I think we have a great job there in trying to inspire and continue the type of work that allows us to interact with young people so that they can become interested as well. Because for some, they still have that mindset that agriculture is just going out in the hot sun and planting without realizing that it can be technology, it can be business, it can be health. I mean, people are looking at biomedicine, things like that, and it's all related to agriculture. So as soon as they get the information, there's an interest that is sparked there. So if we continue to interact with them, I'm sure that eventually we'll see more young girls, especially in the agriculture sector.
Yeah, and you know, go ahead, Shania. Sorry.
No, I was just saying that it's interesting that Faye mentioned that because, like she said, most persons would view agriculture as just planting or doing hard work. But in actuality, agriculture is a lot more. And there's a unique link between the two sectors because we've had interruptions, like for instance, with Photo Redeemer, like Faye mentioned, there's a lot of projects happening with school gardens. And there's actually an opportunity for the use of school gardens in other things other than the field of science. For instance, in education, you can use agriculture and you can use the climate as a teaching tool in education. So there's a lot of different areas that haven't been explored, but there's a lot of interest, like Faye mentioned, in young students and especially in the young girls. For instance, my daughter, just seeing what I do, she has developed an interest in meteorology. I'm not sure where that will take her, but when people actually see what we do and see that it's more than just being out in the sun or it's more than just focusing on the weather, they actually become interested because from my experience, most persons didn't really realize that meteorology or agriculture is a lot more than just the weather or just planting.
Yeah.
So when they learn that, then an interest is developed there because they did not really know that you can do a lot of other things in these fields.
Of course, and I think that's the key. That's the key part about having the children exposed at a young age, because they won't just see it as one-dimensional. If they have a passion for technology, as you noted before, there's a place for that. If it's communication tools, there's a place for that. Planning as well, and of course, some of the natural assumptions people make, those are also a part of the job. So farming, for example, is still essential. Faye?
Yes.
Can you tell us a bit about some of the projects that you are working on? You have a really interesting task at this time.
Yes, very, very interesting. I must say that the ministry, we've had some recent restructuring. A lot of us are young persons that are working in the ministry. There's opportunity now for us to explore a lot of new areas that maybe before we were not exploring. Now, since we're talking about technology, for example, there's so much digital apps out there. I mean, now we can speak of using drones for damage assessments or scouting for pest and disease, using irrigation for crop nutrition, fertigation, all these things. So it's very dynamic right now. Right now, the work that I'm involved in basically is trying to identify those fruits that we have in Belize. For example, your soursop.
Yeah.
There's passion fruit that's definitely non-traditional. We have crabble. We have all these different wonderful fruits that we need to explore and try to find out how much of it is out there, and look at ways that we can process them, or that we can market them, and that we can work along with, for example, the Ministry of Health to say, Belizeans, we need to be healthier, we need to eat healthy. And then, of course, there's opportunity for us to look at export markets for these things. For example, I'm working with some pineapple farmers in Trio along with my colleagues, and the purpose of that is for them to increase their production of pineapples, and they're capable of producing. I must say, Belizeans, we are so blessed. Our farmers work so hard and they have so much potential. It's just a matter of supporting them. So with these particular groups, we're working with them to increase the production and quality and everything of pineapple so that they can be able to sell that for processing and then for exports of increasing their incomes and improving, their entire livelihood. So the beauty about agriculture is that you literally work from the bottom and you're able to see not very long ahead, how that can all come together and impact, people's lives. So that's my recent task, but I'm also involved in promoting women in agriculture. So for the ministry, I would collaborate with the different ministries or different institutions in speaking on behalf of all my colleagues in agriculture and trying to get the word out there that this job is more than just what it was traditionally seen as. It's technology, like you rightly said. This is business. This is health. This is everything. So our job is basically a lot of interaction with farmers and farm families. Family agriculture is something extremely important right now because it's no longer the farmer, meaning the head of the household, but we want to look at the roles of each person that are involved in the entire production. So that's basically some of the areas or the interests that I've been able to work with in the Ministry of Agriculture. And I have excellent colleagues with some very good training. Like I said, the plus is that we're young and have a lot of energy.
Yeah.
So thing is going. We have people like Shana, who is our cousin on the other side. Shana, for example, every 3 months we have what we call a seasonal outlook. And Shana would come in and she knows all the climate data. We know all the crops. So we say, okay, if you have this type of weather, Shana would say, this is coming. And then we say, okay, this will affect the crop in this way or in that way. And we put our heads together, we prepare something, and that can be shared with the farmers out there. So 3 months ahead, they are able to already have an idea of how the weather will impact what they're producing.
And I just want to ask about going into communities, and especially where you have this unique job of perhaps introducing or encouraging new fruits and crops that people can plant. What's the reaction when you, as a young person or as a young woman, go into the communities and you're talking with people who have been doing traditional farming?
It's quite an interesting one because, again, our Belizeans were very special, right? So when you go there and you tell them, look, we can do this, they will ask you, how serious are you? I mean, are you sure that this will work? So that's as a woman, sometimes, I don't know if Shana experiences that, but as a woman going in there, sometimes we are second guess or we're really tested. I would see my male colleague go, and I mean, they could tell you we can plant on the moon tomorrow and let's go. Faces that and they'll start thinking, just an example there. But the reaction is one from some, it makes you feel good because some will tell you, wow, I didn't even know we had women in Belize that can advise, that do have a vision, that know what needs to be done.
Yeah.
There are a few that we still have to work with, but because we are conscious of the mindsets out there, it doesn't stop us from doing what we need to do. It just tells us that we have to, continue to be persistent and, prepare ourselves, be confident about what we're doing, and just continue to try and promote the work that we're trying to do.
Okay. And Shania, tell us about your experience.
Similar to Faye, sometimes when you visit communities or even among some of our peers, whenever you maybe come with an idea or say something, it's like, wait, what? But like Faye said, if somebody else who they might view have more experience, or who sometimes or male counterparts would say or initiate some of the stuff, they will get a greater reception. But like Faye said, eventually and over time, when they see what we're capable of, when they see how we all can work together, it makes a difference and they become more receptive or open to working with us. And in terms of our development so far, like Faye mentioned, we work closely together on a number of products, particularly creating a pest risk forecast for the agricultural sector, where we meet every 3 months. But we're also working on other projects to help communicate and get across the information on not just the weather, but also agriculture, and to help them in their management of water resources, in their management of scheduling irrigation, for instance, if we're going to expect that the crops are going to be water stressed. We're currently working on a project with the Rural Resilient Belize project that is going to help enhance our climate information system, but it's also going to produce apps like Faye mentioned earlier. For instance, we are working on developing an app called ClimaCrop that will help farmers to monitor the physiological development of the crops, but also determine whether or not they need to irrigate and how much and when. And also we're currently, again, in the process of enhancing our climate database system so that it's more integrated with not just the weather data that we collect at the Met Office, but with other data from other stakeholders such as hydrology. And we have a project right now with the World Meteorological Organization where we're exploring the idea of using artificial intelligence to quality control for data. We have a large number of stations, and previously compared to the past where we would have only our manual station, maybe around 10 to 18 of them, we have a network of over 52 stations right now. And with our automatic station, we get in data every 5 minutes. So it's difficult for us or one person to just process and ensure that those data are quality so that we can produce quality products. So we're looking at innovative ideas such as using artificial intelligence to improve our efficiency in collecting data, but in also quality controlling the data so that we can create other products for not just agriculture, but for the general public on a whole. And it's important for us to use the technology that we have available for us to become more efficient, because data and quality data is what drives any sector. Whether it's agriculture, business, you need to have data, and you need to have those data readily accessible and ready for use for users. So that is something that we're trying to work on, but
really
it's a work in progress. Sorry?
No, I was saying it's really interesting, the integration of the technology and kind of the shift away from what you said was the manual way of doing it, kind of the traditional way, to now just making it simpler and also accessible by the use of technology. I have a question in data collection, because when we talk about representation and why it matters in any way, whether it's gender, whether it's ethnicity, whether it's age, there's a reason why it matters. Because sometimes what you may think of as a female in the field as something necessary as a woman, others may not consider. And the same the other way around. Can you give me examples of why representation matters in the fields that you work in?
Well, for instance, data is a very tedious process, like I mentioned earlier, and it involves a lot of work. And what we found in the past, for instance, especially like, for instance, at our office, most of our male counterparts don't really necessarily enjoy taking the time to sift through the data to ensure that it's okay and to pay attention to the little details of the data. While I've found, and in other areas, not just my office, but around the world, that it's more often the women that pay more attention, or take more time in looking at the data. And in the field of agriculture, I've realized something that most persons normally view like Faye mentioned, the male as the head of the household and the one who's responsible for being out in the field and planting and harvesting. But actually the woman, like she mentioned earlier, every member in the household have a unique role. And the woman actually can be data collectors. So yes, maybe the males are doing the manual labor, but women can also do it because it's been done, especially in countries in the past, like Barbados, for instance. In their sugar industry, it was mostly the women who worked in the field. But in today's society and in our current need for accessing data, there's a lot of women that are more involved in the data collection in the fields, and also in the management of those data and also the financial resources of the home. And so, like Faye mentioned earlier, it's a unique opportunity that we have right now where every single member of the household dynamic plays an integral role in not just agriculture, but in just maintaining their households.
All right, final message to young girls who are watching. You know, there are many of us who have to choose from very early on what our inclination is. You're in high school and they tell you, you know, go after lit or go after sciences, or to people, to the young women out there, why should they pursue careers similar to yours?
Well, for one, we need more women. We need the dynamics that women brings to the table, and we need to work or to bring more women to the forefront. Our field can be very enhanced, and we have a lot to offer to the current sciences. Some of the major breakthroughs we've had in the field of meteorology, for instance, have been done by women. In Belize, we've had more women holding roles in leadership positions. So, and it's showing that it's not just something that males can do. It's something that anybody, whether you're male, female, young or old, there are a lot of careers, and especially in our field, that are open to anybody. So if you have the will and the mind to do anything, you can do it. So my message would be to find something that's suitable for you. If it's technology, if you're interested in the sciences, focus on your math and just continue to learn. There's always new things to learn, and don't be afraid or shy away from your career choice if it gets tough, because it will get tough at times, but just persevere and continue to reach out and strive in achieving your goals.
Thank you so much for that, Shania. And for you, Faye?
Shana pretty much said what I would have said, but I think to add to that, I always encourage young girls. You know, there has to be someone around you. Be observant. You know, choose someone that you really admire, somebody that you consider a leader. Follow them and let them know that, you know, I am looking at you. I am looking at the things you are doing, and I want to learn. And this is where I need to be, because that helps you as a young person, and that helps that person as well. Ask for guidance and write things down. When we write things down, we tend to do things with intention, because you know, if you say this year, I want to do so and so, I mean, you write that down, that's a commitment to yourself. So that's a good practice. Build relationships. Women, when we can be very strong together. Shana and I are a perfect example. We didn't study in the same school, or we were not from the same place. But once we identified that each of us had something that we can share with each other for the benefit of everyone, that was a great thing. So as young Belizean women, what we need to do is to continue to be exemplary, continue to support each other, and believe in ourselves, and be confident that we are leaders by nature. We are born to nurture and make things grow. So if we keep those things in mind, I think we can definitely take our country, our families, to another place.
Well, Faith and Shana, thank you so much for joining us this morning for this conversation. We really appreciate it and the important message. So, ladies, thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. And with that, we are going to be taking another break. And when we come back, we are going to be speaking about the importance of medical lab professionals. So please be right back. Please stay with us, and we'll be right back.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us. Then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something. The Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Dwayne Moody, Isani Cayetano, Andrea Polanco, Paul Lopez. Your News 5 Belize teams do whatever it takes, go wherever they need to go, so you can catch the story wherever you are, whenever you want, on whatever device. Channel 5 Belize on television, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. Because news is now everywhere, all the time. And so are we.
Hey, Dad. Hi, Brian. Please stop running around the house. Right now, Dad. Damn it, Brian! I told you stop it! Can't you hear me? Are you deaf? Or you just being stupid?
Time out. Your life is stressful, and it is easy to lose your patience. When you feel this is about to happen, take a time out. Harsh words are verbal violence and can be very harmful. They are not forgotten. Offering alternatives and communicating with your child is the best way to build real respect.
I'm sorry, Brian. That just had a rough day at work. Can you do something quiet?
Do you want a job?
That's more like it.
Reduce your risk of viral illness like the flu or the coronavirus. Wash your hands frequently with soap and water or with an alcohol-based hand sanitizer. Cover your nose and mouth when coughing or sneezing with a tissue. Throw away, then wash hands immediately. Avoid close contact with anyone who has the cold or flu-like symptoms. If you become ill, please visit your doctor or nearest health center and share your travel history. A health and wellness message from your Ministry of Health.
And we're back.
Yep, and we're just jumping right into our third conversation for this morning. And we just were talking about International ICT Day, and we're shifting gears now, and we're going to be speaking about Medical Laboratory Professionals Week, which is, of course, celebrated this week from the 18th to the 24th of April of this year. And this morning we are highlighting some medical lab professionals And of course, we're going to be talking about the vital role that they play in the healthcare system. Joining us this morning, we have a pretty big panel. We've got Lynette Espejo, who is the lab supervisor from the Northern Regional Hospital. We also have Elwin Rodriguez, who is a laboratory scientist from the Central Medical Lab. We've got Ivelty Sanchez, who is a lab tech with the Belize Healthcare Partners Limited, and also Anastasia Reyes Dawson, who is a lab scientist at the Healthcare Partners. So good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Right. Thanks for joining us, and we of course appreciate you guys joining us, and we like to get the chance to talk all about the important work that you do. So why don't we start by talking a little bit about what it is that each of you do on a daily basis, and what your contributions are to the healthcare system. So Lynette, why don't we start with you and the work that you do at Northern Regional?
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Well, at the Northern Regional, we have all departments. We are we call a general area. We have 8 persons working at the lab. In the mornings, we attend to people from 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And after 10 a.m., we start dealing with blood donors until 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So we see out patients, whether they be from a specialty clinic or maternity and health, pregnant mothers, and we draw their samples, we process them, whatever the doctors order, we process them, and we try to have the results by the afternoon or the following morning. Okay. So we provide the service also to the different wards. In the morning, the samples are delivered to the lab from the emergency area, the maternity area, the general ward, surgical ward, whatever department has samples, they send it to the lab for us to process.
Okay. I didn't know you did double duty with blood donors and at
Yes.
the analysis as well. Interesting. Now, tell us about your work, Elwin.
Hi. Good morning, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
As you said, I'm part of the Central Medical Lab team. I'm currently in charge of the chemistry unit, but as well, I could say along with the PCR unit. Because in these times of COVID, we had to make a lot of changes. But I would say that we are in charge of validating, processing of the samples. We are known as the from Central Region. We are, to say, the referral lab.
Yeah.
And samples come to us from all regions. We have to process samples that come from the different polyclinics, and even some that are outpatient from the Cartlusioner. So our lab is divided in different units.
Yes.
Which is different from the Northern Regional, which are all of them together. We have different units. We have the chemistry unit, hematology unit, blood banking, serology, immunology, PCR or molecular biology, and biology. Those are the different units that we have, and we have staff in each of those units.
All right, and let's move to the other 2 ladies.
Hi.
Good
morning. Thanks for having me. Well, we work here at Belize Healthcare Partners, and we have a very small department composed of 5 technologists, 1 laboratory scientist, and 4 phlebotomists. And we have all the different departments from microbiology, hematology, chemistry, immunology, and we process samples from emergency department here for BHPL, from wards and walk-in patients. we open from 7 in the morning up to 7 at night. This is to accommodate the patients at work. So that is, we were the first facility who started, private facility who started to running, processing COVID samples, rapid antigen tests. And it has been quite challenging to adapt to this new COVID norm, but we're doing it and doing it right.
And I'm sure getting used to it now, 1 year later.
Yes, definitely.
I wanna dive into that. You know, you have always done important work. Anybody who goes for a checkup, you have to go to the lab. There's a whole lot of work that takes place behind the scenes. But it took a pandemic for people to really appreciate how critical the role of our medical labs are in being able to keep us safe. What has the last year been like for you all?
It has been scary.
Jump in and tell me,
For the most part, it has been very demanding in the area of COVID because we have all these different departments overwhelmed already with work, and then we added the COVID antigen test to it. So in the beginning, we had hundreds of samples coming in just for the rapid test. Everyone wanting to know if they're positive or not, and then worried about their families. And then we still had our regular lab work that we had to do. So adjusting to this was hard. And then we have limited amount of staffing. So it was even harder. So moving forward throughout the year, we had to make many adjustments to just accommodate the testing.
And for you, Elwin, I would imagine that the past year has also been pretty intense for you at the Central Lab.
It was. It was for us in Central Lab. I think Central Lab will never forget the 2020. It brought across many changes. We had to adapt to so many changes. We went from being a lab that works from 8 to 5 Monday to Friday, to having shifts, to coming out. I mean, we were coming home midnight, 1, 2 o'clock in the morning. Working Sunday to Sunday. Central Lab doesn't work like that, but we had to adapt. Our staff we had to pull staff from different units to come into the to the molecular biology unit. The work was too much. At some point, you guys can remember that only Central Lab was doing the testing.
Yes.
And it was very overwhelming. The amount of work was too much. So it was heavy on us. It was very heavy, but well, thank God we managed to pull through, and up to now, we still have changes. If you heard, I mentioned I am the unit supervisor for chemistry, but I had to be pulled back to the molecular unit as well to assist, and other staff had to be pulled into that unit so that we could have pulled through.
And it's a very small staff. You know, we've covered the Central Medical Lab quite a few times. It's not a big, vast space and lots of people working there, so it meant that you all were pulling some long shifts, huh?
Well, yes, even though we're not a lot, it's not a big staff. I think we are the biggest staff and when it comes to labs in the country, because we should have around 25 or 30 technologists in Central Lab, technologists and scientists.
Okay.
Which I think in most districts, well, Lynette will be the one to speak about that, but I think they have far less than that. And even in the privates, there are less. So even though we are the biggest in staff, but still we don't have enough. We need more. Yeah.
Now, this week is It's Medical Laboratory Professionals Week, and I want to know how you all have been commemorating the week itself and the profession that you chose to work in.
Well, before COVID, we used to make sales for the lab. For us to celebrate the week, we would decorate the lab, and then we would have patients coming in on Fridays. We'd have coffee, sweet bread, fruits, juice for every single patient that comes into the lab. But now, because of COVID, we didn't do anything last year. We did our T-shirt, we did a background, and it was just for us. COVID has changed a lot for us. So we are trying to see how we can do a new norm for this period. But celebrating tomorrow, we have our region will be providing lunch for us. That's it. We'll take some pictures. The Northern Regional Lab, we enjoy celebrating everything we can. We do everything together. We try to stick as a group. We work as a team. And any little chance we can, we try to make something big out of it.
How big is your team there?
It's 6 medical technologists. I think we have 2, out of the 6, 2 are scientists. We have 1 phlebotomist and 1 medical laboratory technician, 3.
All right, well, this is a good time to school us. What's the difference between this? So the phlebotomist is the person who withdraws the sample, if I'm right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then you have the lab scientists. That's
Mr. Rodriguez and Ms. Dawson, they have a bachelor's degree in medical laboratory.
Okay.
So the technologists, we have only associate's degree.
Okay. And other roles within the labs that people can explore. Tell us about that.
Like we mentioned, like Elwin mentioned, we have different units. In Central Lab, everybody has like their specialty, you could say. They're assigned to a unit.
Yeah.
And the difference in the district is that it's one person doing all the different units. It's a much smaller, but we do have our workload. So when it's Monday to Friday, we work in shifts, 24/7. On weekends, we work on call, Saturday and Sunday, and then Monday we start our shifts again. So it's one person. If you have a chemistry, a hematology, a urinalysis, it's one person doing all of that in the lab, in the district. And also, when Monday to Friday, we do the blood banking, so that's another department. It's only one person also.
And perhaps Evelsia and Anastasia, you can talk about what you all will be doing to commemorate this week.
Okay, well, to start off the week, Monday, we did a little opening remarks. We issued out certificate of appreciation to the laboratory professionals. We have been having certain presentations about lab and why we are essential, and you're having snacks, games, enjoying within the department. Other years we used to do blood drives and have offering free tests for the community, but now we can't. Due to the COVID, we need to find a way how to do that now. And to end it off, we will be having a staff trip, just staff only, to enjoy and have some fun out of the laboratory setting.
All right. Well, we want to thank you for telling us a bit about all the work that you have been putting in so far. We know, very early on in the pandemic, we were paying so much attention. We knew how much extra work was being put in. There were results coming out middle of the night on Sundays, and there has been a lot of effort on your part. So first of all, I want to say thank you to all of the med lab professionals across the country for being such an integral part of our health system in the pandemic, and of course that's all year round. Any closing thoughts from any of you? All right.
Well, since no one's going to talk.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
You're the mouthpiece.
Well, we just want to encourage Belize, the youth, the young people out there, to look into this profession.
Yeah.
The lab is a very interesting, a very beautiful career, and as many people say, we are the ones in the background. Sometimes you don't see us. When you go to a hospital, when you go to a health facility, the first ones that you see might be the nurses, the doctors. They will tend to you. But then when they take a sample, when they need to confirm anything regarding your health, that sample will go to us right back there. You might not see us, but we're there. We are actually confirming or any suspicion that the physician might have.
Yeah.
So our role is very vital. It is very important for the diagnosis and the treatment of a patient. So we are here. The lab is here. We hope to see more people, more young people going into this field. We need them. We need more staffing throughout our country in both the private and the public facilities. So I hope to hear, and I hope that the media as well can promote a bit more our work. Right? They say that sometimes we are heroes that are we are not seen. We're not in the center stage. But we are there, and we hope to create a bit more of knowledge of our profession. We are something that I have always fight for is the correct term. We are technologists. Lab technicians are something else. They are persons who assist, but we have technologists in our country now. We have scientists as well. So. Okay. Thanks for the invitation, Ms. Marlene, and we hope to encourage more people to come into this field.
All right, we appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to have an update from the field. As we said earlier in the show, there is the budget debate taking place today, and the unions are also gearing up to show their discontent with the current wage cut proposals. We'll have an update from our news team after the breaks. Please stay tuned.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank Limited is here for you. There is nothing more important than your health and safety, and we continue to make every effort to make banking safer for you. Our staff is working around the clock to make sure you can do your banking conveniently 24/7 using our mobile banking app and online banking and keeping ATMs up and running. We value your relationship with us and are here to provide the support you need. First responders are also out there 24/7. Thank you, healthcare workers, security forces, firefighters, caregivers. You are all appreciated. Stay safe. We will get through this together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Hello, Belize. You may not be aware of the new travel requirements set in place by the Center of Disease Control and Prevention. Passengers traveling to the U.S. must present a negative COVID test or a documentation of having recovered from COVID-19 to travel to the U.S. In light of this, Maya, in partnership with Caring Hands Clinic, have established testing centers in all their municipal airports. Caring Hands Antigen Test Center is operational in San Pedro, Belize City, Dangriga, Placencia, and Hopkins. These testing facilities are staffed by licensed healthcare professionals, including doctors, registered nurses, and nurse practitioners. Testing is done using Abbott rapid test devices that are FDA approved and made in the USA. The service is safe, fast, affordable, and the close proximity of the centers makes them convenient. Walk-ins are welcomed, but appointments are encouraged. If you would like to make an appointment, please feel free to do so at
Make your appointment, get tested, and in 15 minutes, you can get back to your vacation.
Es un hecho que puedes obtener servicios ilimitados con Smart. ¿Cansado de que se corte la línea cuando más necesitas estar conectado? Es un hecho que cuando te suscribes al plan de Smart Plus, obtienes llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Y también es un hecho que te puedes suscribir con un grupo de 5 miembros al plan Smart Share y hasta 40 miembros al plan Smart Enterprise para llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Smart tiene los verdaderos planes ilimitados. Es un hecho. Sé Smart y vive de forma Smart.
Dwayne Moody, Isani Cayetano, Andrea Polanco, Paul Lopez. Your News 5 Police teams do whatever it takes. Go wherever they need to go, so you can catch the story wherever you are, whenever you want, on whatever device. Channel 5 believes on television, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube, because news is now everywhere, all the time. And so are we.
Persons at risk of becoming seriously ill from the flu or the coronavirus, people over the age of 60, persons with medical conditions they already had, such as diabetes or heart disease or conditions that has made their immune system low, such as HIV or cancers. At this time, there is no vaccine or treatment. Serious cases may need oxygen or ventilator support. Be caring and show support for your elderly loved one during this time. A health and wellness message from your Ministry of Health.
So class, let's review your homework. What are some of the things that we can do to make sure everyone has a clean and reliable supply of water?
Sir, we should turn off the faucet when using soap to bathe, to wash our hands, and maybe even our cars. This will cut our water bills and save us a lot of water.
My dad says we should keep the area around the water pipes close to our houses clean. Yes, sir. We should encourage our parents to pay their water bills so the entire village will always have clean water.
Right, class. We should not forget to attend water board meetings and add our 2 cents. Make sure everyone has reliable, clean water.
My mom says that we young people can volunteer to paint the public water pipe.
So, how do we make sure we will always have reliable, clean water?
Join the Clean Water Revolution.
Get involved today and do your part to keep your water supply clean and reliable.
The Department of Rural Development is working on achieving Goal 6 of the Sustainable Development Goals, which is to ensure access to water and sanitation for all.
You never know when it might happen. You can't afford to take chances with your safety. you can't afford to take chances with your life. Because you never know when it might happen. Always be safe, because you never know.
We're back.
And if you're joining us right now, we're just getting our show wrapped up after a bunch of conversations for this morning. We do want to say thank you to all our guests who came in to share their perspective on a range of different issues.
Yeah.
We, of course, started talking with Antonio Hagar, who's an epidemiologist from the Ministry of Health, talking about the trends that we saw in COVID over the year. Yeah. As well as highlighting different people in the medical and technological fields this morning. So thank you to all of our guests.
Of course. And as we noted, today is day one of the budget debate that is about to start in Belmopan. And in fact, the teachers and actually the unions have already started to mobilize to start their protest actions as well. We'll have full coverage of what's happening there. We do have an update, of course, that the BNTU has officially issued a notice of strike action effective Monday, the 26th of April. So that is official. The BNTU is saying they are going to strike. They sent that notice to the minister and the CEO and chief education officer. The letter is dated April 15th, but of course we have just been able to get that confirmed. Also, the Chamber of Commerce has come out this morning with their release, the private sector, and they are calling on government and the unions to urgently settle outstanding issues of good faith. And they are saying if the country is left on its current trajectory, we will add more strain to an economy already under severe stress. So here we have the private sector chiming in on what is happening at this time. All eyes are going to be on what's happening in Belmopan, and there are lots of questions about what's going to be the next move from here.
Absolutely. So we, of course, will be bringing you coverage of today's proceedings in the House, and as well as giving you an update on all that happened today from both the government and the union side. We're going to be on the ground, of course, in Belmopan, sharing all those different perspectives, and we're going to have a rundown of all of today's events on our newscast for tonight. So please stay tuned, and we'll keep you informed as this process continues. Yep.
All right, that's all the time we have for today.
And if you want to contact us, you can drop us a line at oie@channel5belize.com. You can also
sorry, yeah. I was going to say we did actually get a report from the field. It has arrived in time. We have Dwayne Moody, who was able to stop and talk to some teachers in Hattieville. This was just a while ago, and here's his report.
7:15 this morning, teachers have come out and they're lining the highways at different points in Belize City on the Philip Goldson Highway near the roundabout by Brody's. They're also here in Hattieville, where they're sending a message that they've been doing since the start of the week, which is that they do not accept that 10% salary cut. They do not accept the increment freeze, and they're asking for accountability from the government. I am here with Ms. Annette Petch. She is a member of the Belmopan branch of the BNTU, but she lives in Hattieville, so she's out here with some of her colleagues to ensure that, they send a message to everybody that is passing by. Ms. Annette, talk to us. Good morning. Talk to us about, asking for good governance. Don't want the 10% cut.
No, we're saying 90% across the board with the teacher population that we do not agree with this 10%. What we're not appreciating, what the government is doing presently right now, is that this is our reality. This is what is happening. This is our ministry, our prime minister, all our ministers, and this is where we are. You're asking us for this 10%. However, you're not willing to give us what we're asking for. I would be ready to give them their 10% if they would do what is right. What is right? What is right is that we're asking for equality, equity, and liberation. That liberation means sign on to UNCAC. Put your money where your mouth is. Not only that, we also want for you to put these laws into place that we have been asking you. Hold ministers responsible and accountable for the things that they're. Look how many lands have been sold right under our feet, and we can't do anything about it. But if I, Annette Pitch, had taken money from my school, police would be up there arresting me. Not only that, if I had ill-treated any of our children in the classroom, they would come to arrest us too. Why is that accountability not placed on our government? Another thing, our BNTU president went online yesterday to share with us that the government, they're lying to us. We elected her because we trust her. We elected this government because we wanted to trust them. But we cannot, because she is saying to us, or she's sharing, that they're saying that they gave us some kind of leverage or compensation, and they clearly did not. They're saying just to divide and conquer. Look what they did with the nurses. But you know something? Together we shall not be moved.
So this is happening across the country in different municipalities. You guys are out.
Yes, it is. I'm from the Belmopan branch, and yes, my colleagues will be up there doing the same thing as well. But like I said, for me to travel from here all the way over there, especially what is going on financially with the gas prices going up. Some of us teachers, they're talking about, oh, we have cars, we can do this, we can, because we work hard. We also have teachers who have put their own finances in their education to put ourselves at that level to live a life that is comfortable. You're asking 10% from me now, but you're going to ask 10% from my children, and you're going to add another 10% to my grandchildren. That's going to be 30% in the future. We cannot have that. We have to stand up.
Thank you so much, Ms. Annette. There you have it, guys. Teachers are standing up. They're lining the highways and sending that message again, and this will continue into tomorrow. As you know, today the budget debate is going to take place today and tomorrow, of course, and in day one they're going to be out, and they will do it again tomorrow, and later on I will try to have as much as I can from Belmopan, where the PSU along with teachers are coming out en masse. I am here in Hattieville reporting for News 5. Back to you guys in the studio.
Thank you so much. Of course, that was an early morning report from our News 5 team. Dwayne Moody out there getting the story for us. And we heard very clearly, Gavin, just how the teachers are feeling very early on. The message has been consistent that they are rejecting the current proposal, and they are very definitive in asking for some sort of confirmation that there will be a change in direction in the management of this country.
Yes, absolutely, and we are going to be continuing to bring you that coverage of both the events of the House today, as well as getting some perspectives from some of the people who are protesting, from the teachers to the other unions.
Yeah. All right. But we got to wrap things up. Of course, the House meeting gets started in just a few. You can catch it live here on Channel 5. And for us, we'll be signing off. So remember, you can find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
Start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your heart open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.